All right. So we are on air again, and we are back after this break and networking session that happened. Um, so now we're set to start our panel discussion. Let's move to it. I'm excited a lot because today we have with us fabulous guests. So you already remember them from keynotes that they've delivered at our program. And with great pleasure, I introduce them again. So today with us at panel discussion, we have expert of people and change advisory at KPMG Malta, Dr. Yeva Kruskova. We have executive and leadership coach, author of the bestseller How to Think Strategically, Greg Giddens from United States. And we have management consultant, founder and executive president of Deeply Practical PM, William Stewart, right from Canada. So thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on board. And our topic today at this discussion is path to resourcefulness. So it's been said a lot today and yesterday about different aspects of this competence. And here at panel discussion, we'd like to hear your opinion on how to build up this competence and maybe linked competence. For everyone who's watching us, I'd like to encourage you to ask questions. So I'm still monitoring it in the chat, and I will try to bring it to the table at relevant moments of the discussion. Okay, so may I ask our panelists, our speakers, to start from your perspective on resourcefulness, how you envision it, and then we can build up some discussion here. So please, Yeva, may I offer you to start?
Yes, thanks a lot, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today and to speak about this topic. From my point of view, resourcefulness is really how project managers and even employees in their everyday life are dealing with uncertain situations. So something what you cannot predict, and when we are dealing with the projects and managing the project, a lot of things can go wrong. So it's more like how people can manage this situation, bring new solution, or to speak with the team, use knowledge of the own team members to come with a new solution for the situation. And also, it's very important, I think, what is the part of the competency is a holistic view. So sometimes, even I see it in our everyday life that we are so deep in operation and dealing with the different details. So sometimes it's very important to look on the project from different perspective and from holistic view and to understand big picture, and maybe not just to think about the task which we have to do today or next week, but also what is going to happen in the further future. So this is very important, this complex view. And from the psychological point of view, because I think it's the part of myself, to provide also this view, is that I think very important thing is to understand own resources. So where I'm strong, which resources I really do not have in myself, or I know it's area for improvement, and which resources my team have, because everyone has own knowledge, own skills. So how to optimize use of the skills, not just from myself as project manager, but also from the whole team.
Interesting. Thank you. Let's pass the word to all our panelists, and then maybe we'll have this like cross questions and cross discussion. Greg, would you mind to continue?
Yeah, thank you. So I really enjoyed Eva's explanation of that. So I come at this from a perspective of strategic thinking. And one of the messages that I have for everyone listening in your career is that strategic thinking is an individual competency it's rare, and it's valuable. And if you can show the people that you work with that you are capable of strategic thinking, you will find your career gains a lot of advantages for doing that. Well, one of the key elements of strategy is about the way that we use resources. So often that, you'll see when people are talking about strategy, they'll show pictures of a chessboard and chess pieces. And here in the United States, when we talk about American football, there's always diagrams of X's and O's showing where the players go. So one element of describing what strategy is about is saying that I have these things called resources, and that these resources have to be arranged in a certain kind of way. If I am clever in the way that I arrange those resources, perhaps I gain some advantage, I gain some sort of power. So one of the first things that I'd like to offer for some further thought and suggestion is, what exactly is a resource? How do we distinguish a resource from, say, a commodity? And then how do we think about the way that we put resources in different places so that we can achieve the goals, the objectives that we have? And this is true whether I'm talking about project level goals and objectives, portfolio level goals and objectives, program goals or objectives, or go all the way up to the enterprise business level. It's fundamentally, we have these resources, and if we're going to claim ourselves to be resourceful, we have to have something effective and useful to say about the resources, and importantly, how we're arranging those resources. So what I like to try to help people to do is to think better about the way that they're using their resources.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for this perspective. So very interesting question. So if we're talking about resourcefulness, so what are exactly those resources and how we distinguish them? All right, we will return to this point. Thank you for bringing it to the table. Bill, would you like to continue?
Sure. Thank you very much. And thanks IPMA for the opportunity. And it's great to be on the panel with Eva and Greg. So what I wanted to lay out as a foundation is that in order to be resourceful, you first need to be optimistic. And you need to believe that success is possible. And there's a layer below the layer I talked about in my keynote when we talked about that. You have to have a sense that the world in general is getting better and that it is possible to make things better. And we don't always think that way. The brain is in fact set up to worry. We've got the back of our brain is set up to be anxious because from an evolutionary perspective, it's important to worry. It's important to worry about big animals. It's important to worry about there's going to be a drought or a famine. It's important to worry that our kids might get hurt. Are they getting too close to the cliff? It's so evolutionarily, we're built up that way. It can go too far, though. It can go to the level of, things are in a really bad state. In fact, things are getting worse. And a lot of us fall into that. Maybe all of us at some parts of our lives. All of us fall into that. And I've certainly seen a lot of that around the world right now. A lot of people I talk to say, everything's is there any hope? It seems to be an uphill battle and maybe we can't actually win it. So what I'd like to offer is that we're looking at the trees, not the forest. And if you look at the forest, and you use your rational mind, you look at the data, the world is getting much, much, much better. It's incredible how much better it's getting. There's a wonderful sentence that the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. The arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. And that can take decades. In fact, that quote is more than 100 years old. It can take a long time. I'd like to just share something quickly here with you. Some graphs from an article by Nicholas Kristof. Here's a few graphs. right here is the number of people that have lived in extreme poverty as defined by the World Bank, just between the 1980s and about 2015. And you can see it's fallen from 42% down to 10%. If we just look at the news, we don't think that's true. We think things are getting worse and worse and worse. It's getting dramatically better. If you take a look at childhood mortality, hopefully you can see this graph. Tell me if you can't. Childhood mortality has just plummeted. Throughout most of human history, about half of children died before the age of 15. Now that's down to 4%. And you can see the improvement from 1990 till 2016 has been quite dramatic. If we take a look at the literacy rate, the literacy rate from 1820, even from 1920, this red line is the world literacy rate. It's up to about 85%. 85% of the people in the world can read and write now. So it starts there. I mean, things are not good enough. The project is not doing well enough. We're not doing well enough on schedule. We're not doing well enough on budget. We're not doing well enough on world climate. We're not doing well enough on injustice. And all that is true. But in order to have the optimistic mindset, in order to be able to work on that in a productive fashion, we need to be happy. We need to think there's a chance. And so what I would just offer to people, especially young people, is that if you just extend your timeline far enough, the world is getting much better. I mean, I was born in the early 60s, and even in my little lifetime, I think of myself as young, things have got dramatically better. Racial justice, we're not there. It is so much better. Women's rights, things were really bad in the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even early 80s when it started to change. Before 1990, to be an environmentalist, you couldn't talk about it in public. It was a radical communist position. 1990, things changed with the demonstrations around the world with Earth Day. People realized the globe came together. So resourcefulness starts with optimism, which comes from a realistic assessment of where we are and where we go. You can solve problems. If you got problems in the project, you got problems in your life, you can solve them. Do not give up. Just keep working at it, and we'll get there. So there's a foundation for you.
Nice foundation. So that's very optimistic point. So that's thank you for bringing it to the discussion. So as I see, so now we have a free perspective on resourcefulness here. Yeah. So Yeva, you've started from setting the idea that it's like dealing with uncertainty. Then we added the question that and what is actually those resources are. And finally, we polish it with the idea that to being resourceful, yeah, we need to be also optimistic and to gather this optimistic data. So the question I thought initially during your words was if we start from the beginning, yeah, that's resourcefulness is dealing with capability of dealing with uncertainty. How it then differs from, let's say, risk management procedures, and what do you think on it? That's the question to all panelists who would like to continue. Please, the floor is yours.
Again, if I may add, like just from my perspective, there are two elements for each project management and each project manager. One is soft part and one is hard part. So when we are thinking about what can get wrong and about mitigation of the risk and all these things, I completely agree with Bill that all challenge we should take and to think optimistically in this way that we can solve it. And there is the methodology, how to mitigate the risk and how to think about it, what can go wrong. And another part for me in this whole dealing with uncertainty and with risk, it's really this soft part. So sometimes we see this quite a lot in employees and in staff in the organization, that people have different level of potential. They have different level of skills in the different areas, and not everyone can deal with the same situation in the same way. And it should be like this. It's we are human beings, so we can't be ideal and we can't be the best in everything. So I think it's really important to understand where is your limit as a project manager, where is the limit of your employees. Like, if I'm not, for example, what Bill mentioned or Greg about strategic thinking or about optimism, like when I have some limit somewhere, there is possibility that I have some team member who is better in some things, and we should use this strength of other people to deal with this uncertainty in the best way possible. So I would definitely recommend all project manager, not just young, but also further in their career, to think about your employees, your people, your colleagues, even about yourself, in the sense like what is really your strength, and build on this. And this might help you a lot to deal with any situation. It's very important to start with this point, I think.
Bill, Greg, would you add?
I'll go next. So one way to think about resources is to look through it from the framing of how we think about time. So most project managers have a due date, and they have a certain amount of work that they're trying to accomplish by that due date, and they're acutely aware of the clock. To them, time is a resource to be consumed. You know, they look at the calendar and they say, have steadily less and less resources. And what I see is kind of a dominating mindset of people who have been in project management too long is they do get this mentality of scarcity, that there's never enough time, there's never enough resources, and so forth. And in a bunch of exercises I've done with project managers over many years, this mentality of scarcity is a very dominant mindset within most project managers. Of course, the opposite of a mentality of scarcity is a mentality of abundance. And one of the things that we need to help people to do is to recognize the abundance that is around there. And that's key to resources. So it's true on one hand that resources are consumed, and time is a resource and it is consumed. But it's also true on the equal hand that the time is a source of opportunity. If I switch my perspective away from short term to longer term, I see a future that has a lot of change that is inclusive of opportunity as well as risk. So I believe that we are in a decade of jaw-dropping change. I think if I look over my decades of life, that this will be a decade that I will look at and say there's been more change in society, in the world, in this current decade of the 2020s than any of the other decades that I've lived in my particular life. So it points to me that this idea of resourcefulness is going to be increasingly important. But part of the idea of resourcefulness is not simply to say, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough resources, and we have to challenge ourselves to think differently about the challenges that face us collectively and the resources that we have available to us. So those would be a couple of comments that I would add to that.
Thank
Sounds
you
great.
for it. Yes, Bill, please.
So with respect to risk management and resourcefulness, I'll just offer that it's a wonderful example where you see the benefits of optimistic thinking. In my experience, people don't like to think about risks. So that's why you need a project manager to get them in a room and say, what are the risks? What could go wrong? Let's make a list of things that go wrong. And then that's all you do. You don't try to solve them. It's just a very focused meeting. And then as the process goes, you may qualify them, and then you may quantify them and put numbers on them. And then you sit back and you say, and that doesn't take very long. That just takes 2-3 meetings, maybe, not very long. And then you sit back and you say, okay, so which ones are worse? What's the probable impact, time and dollars? Which ones should we try to do something about? And in my experience, you can almost always take about 1/3 to 2/3 of the risk out of the project simply by sitting down and thinking about them with that power of the team. Again, that power of the team, where surprising, amazing things come out if you just get more than one person in a room, possibly a virtual room, and talk about it. It's incredible what you can do about risks in advance. Sometimes all you do is you start work on it at the beginning of the project. Originally, you weren't going to start to month 3 or month 6, but you say, you know, this is really risky. Tell you what, even if we waste a little bit of time, let's start work on that actually in the first week. And just by chipping away at it, we'll be so much farther ahead of the game. If things do start to go wrong, we'll know it's so much farther in advance. Or maybe all you do is you kick it upstairs. Why are bosses there? To help us. Sometimes you say, I know what my risk mitigation strategy for this is. I'm going to start telling my boss there's nothing I can do about it. And if there's nothing he can do about it, he needs to start bugging his boss and shorten the approval cycle or get the resources, whatever the case may be. So it's a wonderful example of when the risks start. When you first look at the first list of risks, it looks hopeless. Oh my gosh. But simply by believing that you can find a solution with multiple brains, you can take 1/3 to 2/3 of the risk out of the project during the planning stage before you even start.
I'd like to catch here from this idea of multiple brains. That's great that you bring it to the discussion. That we tend to think about resourcefulness as about individual competence, like if this person can handle uncertainty or not. And when we're starting to talk about strategic approach and about the team, so how do you think, can it be like a organizational competence or team competence? Can we elaborate more on this side? Because I see the questions in the chat that related to this idea. So we have guys asking, just clarifying if we understand the people, money, time as resources also here in terms of resourcefulness. So let's try to discuss here. So can it be a team and organizational competence? And is it possible to develop this competence further?
Yeah, I'll start off with a couple of comments. So when I talk about strategic thinking, I think of it primarily as an individual competence, but it's rare in many organizations. So where I've seen it work well is that if you can bring together a group of individual competent people and allow them to have a high quality conversation about the future, about the resources, about what they can do to cleverly combine their resources, that's where you gain organizational impact. So my answer would be pretty much the same, that we think about resourcefulness as an individual competency, but it only really has its impact and its value when we can bring people together and allow them to have effective conversations so that they can go about problem solving together. So that would be my contribution.
Thank you. Eva, Bill?
Go ahead, Eva, if you...
Yes, I can add to this. I really agree with Greg and with Bill in the sense that 1 + 1 is 3. So it's always like this. And I think if we are speaking about project management or other topic, it's really the combination of the skill of other people. So I think from the perspective of, I'm not sure if you are aware or if our participants are aware of the methodology of high potential and high performer. So you have like the scale of potential and you have scale of performance. And it's very rare, like in organization, you will find maximum 10% of employees who are your shining stars, who are high performer and high potential. So possibly you will, and if you are lucky, maybe it's you or maybe it's someone from your team who will be the driver of resourcefulness. And it will be really someone who is super optimistic, is thinking out of the box. And if you find this person, it's high demand on the market and low supply. So when you find this employee or this colleague, stick with the person because it's your shining star. It can be really strong individual competence. However, the world is not working like this, and you can't find these people everywhere. So possibly you will find someone with very strong sense for some part of this competence, but maybe other team members can complement very nicely with this. So based on that, I start with the synergy at the beginning because I think it's really important to put the skills of the team together. So yes, you can find individual who is very strong in resourcefulness. However, if you do not have it, you have to be aware of this, that I do not have it. My team, it's not there, or there is some limit. So how we are going to fix this? Are we going to involve someone else with ideas who will help us? Or how we are going to deal with this? So definitely the team can be developed in this way. What I think is important to mention is to give people the offer to develop these skills a bit. So even if someone is not thinking out of the box and it's really low potential in this skill, it doesn't mean that the person cannot be developed. But some people need some time, need opportunity, need to learn from other people, need to be part of this group as we are, to just absorb the thing. And normally it's not coming from the results you can't see from one day to another, right? So just give people time and give them opportunity and give them time to develop.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that a lot. I was speaking the other day about this thing called a growth mindset, which I heard from an elementary school teacher who was in one of my classes, and said that she had just come out of teachers college, and she had been taught that it's very important to teach the kids to have a growth mindset. The idea that just because this is what they're capable of right now has very little to do with they can be capable of, with some training, with some education, with some practice, some hard work, and help from others. You put all those together, they can get much better. And it's one of the reasons I'm such a huge believer in training. When I was a functional manager in a large organization, that was what I thought of my number one job, was to spend the whole training budget every year, because you learn from hundreds, thousands, millions of person years of experience in these courses, so you can make people better. I'd also offer, if you can, try to send your entire team or entire sections on training at once. Comms training, leadership training, negotiations training. If you can get them all together in that room, or bring an instructor in to that room, there's a sense of camaraderie and shared team development that happens when you send a team on training. They're all getting better at once. You get kind of like an extra benefit from that shared team training. I'd also offer, I think you need to tell your team some of these stories, some of these things that we're talking about here, some of the things Greg and Ev are saying. They're not mind readers, so you need to say these things that we can solve any problems if we just get together in a room. All of this kind of stuff. You need to, as we sometimes say, you need to vibrate the airwaves. You need to open your mouth, and you need to communicate this stuff. So setting an example is not just a physical thing. Sometimes you actually have to share the words. one other thing I'd offer is it's very important to encourage the team to be self-empowered, to make decisions on their own, and to take risks and sometimes fail. And one of the ways that I've found effective to do that is, again, you vibrate the airwaves at some early meeting, you got a new team, a new project. You just take a moment, you just communicate that. You say something like, listen, folks, you guys are empowered in whatever your areas of responsibility are. I can't do this project. I'm just the project manager. I'm the least important person in this project. You guys are actually going to do it. And you're all empowered to make the decisions and take the actions required to create success in this project. And I want you to know that if you make mistakes and you take risks and they fail, good risks, I'm not going to get upset. And then I usually pause and I say something like, now there's a difference between good risks and bad risks. A bad risk would be, I don't actually have to turn the fire extinguishing system on when I leave the building this weekend. Nothing will happen. I don't actually have to do the backups. The disks are probably, see, that would be a really bad risk. But if you take a good risk, you try a new process, you try a new piece of software, you're trying something to move things along because you think it'll actually help. You don't have a better solution and it doesn't work. I'm not going to get upset about that. So you need to not only delegate and empower, but you need to tell them that you're delegating and empowering, give them that permission. And if they do make mistakes, you can't get upset. You just can't get upset because it'll spread like wildfire, and it's so easy to lose your credibility as a leader if you make those kinds of mistakes. You need to say things like, well, yeah, I've been there, I've done the same kind of thing, because that, I hope, certainly is true. I don't know about you, but I know for me, the first time I've done anything in my life, it was a bad job. It took too long and it wasn't very good. The first time we cooked pasta, bad job. Undercooked, overcooked. That's the way it goes. So you mentor, you follow up at least once a week, maybe more often depending what you're doing. But you need to give the team that room to be resourceful and to try things and to develop their capabilities and take good risks.
And I think in connection with this it's very important what Bill said, it's psychological safety of the team. So this is something what you need to establish, you need to really create in your team. So people have to have the feeling like if I'm in difficult situation and I did mistake, I really can come and say, like, look, this is not going in the right way, and no one will punish me, in the sense like we are human beings, we are making mistakes. Sometimes it can cost money and can cost a lot of money, but it's still better like to put it under the carpet to come and start to solve the problem. So this is a big topic even now in pandemic time, how to create the psychological safety in even virtual environment when we are not together. But it's very related with resourcefulness and with resilience of people, with admitting mistakes, with learning from each other. Even the basic thing like lesson learned after project. I'm not sure what is your experience, but from my experience is the worst part of the project, because people to come and say like, this really was not right and we should do it better in the next time, like it's a difficult skill, I would say. So to create this, it's very important.
Yeah, if I could just pick up on that quickly, and the lessons learned, you're right. If we could all raise hands here, if I ask the question, how many of us have participated in a good lessons learned, but they thought it was a really productive lessons learned meeting? My experience when I ask that question is 10, 15% of hands go up. We all need to do better at it because it's the highest return on investment event in the entire project lifecycle. And one of the things you do need to do up front, vibrating the airwaves again, is you need to say something like, okay, everybody, let's check our egos at the door. No names, no blame. This is about us all getting better. So let's focus on the problems, the things that we can do better next time, and the things that went well that we want to repeat, so that you get no names, no blame. It wasn't John made the mistake. It was here's what didn't go well. So you have to say that.
Thank you for this, for building up these ideas. So during this conversation, we got a question in the chat from Teresa. She asked, so it does contradict autonomy. So that the idea was that I guess when we were talking about bringing everyone together to make 1 + 1 = 3, then it should contradict the autonomy. But I guess we already addressed that question in the Bill's speech, that we should all should find the own solution, own way, but it's easier to make it when we all together doing that. So I'd like to focus us on the next question that just appeared. And I guess this one can be valuable for a lot of us. So Jovita asking, I find it extremely difficult to hire people. How do you recognize a resourceful person in a bunch of CVs? Is there a way to spot them at the hiring stage? Would you share your experience? Yeva, as usual, we can start from
Yeah,
your
I
side.
can start. Look, I went from through period of recruitment experience and to lead end-to-end recruitment process, so I completely understand. And it's really difficult, and the market is how it is. So as I mentioned, like there are a lot of people who are great, but there are a lot of people who are suitable for other job roles, I would say, and it's very difficult to understand which candidate is really suitable for the specific project or for the specific role, because something different can be interesting more for the person. It's very difficult to pick someone based on CV, I would say. What I would definitely recommend is to think about people in the bigger perspective when you see their CVs, because you do not know what is behind. So from my experience, it really happened that I know that we have limited resources, as Greg mentioned. So we have even limited time, we have limited people, but sometimes you can just give a quick call to someone, to speak with someone, and you understand a bit more than you just see on the paper. So I would definitely say consider all options, not just what you see on the paper, and try to go a bit deeper. Once you speak with the person and you like the candidate and you start to ask a question, I would definitely recommend to ask questions which are going to the past. So tell us about your experience when you had to deal with the uncertain situation. So you will understand more what was the experience of the person, and there is methodology for this as well. So you need to ask for the specific task, responsibility of the person, what was the result. And it's very interesting to see if people try to lie. You will recognize it quite quickly, and not everyone is prepared for this answer, or if you start to ask the details about the situation. So it might help you at least to have an idea. So ask few of these situations related to specific competence, specific skills which you need, like uncertainty, thinking out of the box, which innovation you brought to the company, how you deal with specific situation in the project which is important for you, and you will see how the person will react. So this might be helpful. And another thing is that you never know, so it's a bit of gambling with the candidate. Sometimes people looks very interesting on the paper, and you have interview and the person is great, and then you have the person in the company, and definitely you will see area for improvement. But this is how it's working. So try to eliminate as many as possible the risks at the beginning of the process.
Thank you, Yeva. Greg, what do you build from the strategic perspective?
Yeah, so first off, the way that I understood the question was the questioner was asking about hiring people. interviewing people, and specifically around resourcefulness. So assuming that resourcefulness is something that you want to hire for in people, I think 2 questions to ask are, how do you define resourcefulness? And can you give me an example of a time when you were resourceful? Now, to the first question, how do you define resourcefulness? I find that people have not thought about that question very hard. It just sounds like a virtue, you know, efficiency or honesty or a lot of other things. So I think right there, if resourcefulness is truly important to you, they should have a thoughtful answer to that question. And it seems to me that the answer says that there's probably something about the resources that we have at present, that there's hidden sources of value within those things. And I think the other part of the answer would say, looking beyond what we're constrained to, looking outside of the box, to use the cliche, here's a way that I imported a resource that other people hadn't thought about doing. So that would be my 2 bits of suggestion is, you know, ask them for a definition of resourcefulness and listen for the thoughtfulness that they bring to that. And then the second thing is look for examples. And here's a great little acronym. If you're ever in an interview situation, but also if you're the interviewee, it's STAR. So S stands for situation. What was the situation that you were in? T, task. What were you tasked to do? A is action. What did you actually do? And R is the result. So STAR, situation, task, action, result, is a great little framework for thinking about how you ask and answer questions in interviews. And it really boils down to your ability to tell stories. And I think this is an important, well, storytelling is a strategic thinking micro skill, that we're trying to tell stories about the future that are big enough and roomy enough that people can see a place for themselves in it. And often it's the finding new resources, undiscovered sources of value, that brings that insight to people's head that says, oh yeah, I can see how this will work. And that might be actually where the sources of optimism might lie, is in having a realistic plan to achieve a stretch goal.
All of that makes such perfect sense to me. So the only thing I'd add to that is some of the questions to ask, of course, would be things like, tell me about some very difficult situations you've been in and how you handled it, which is, I think Eva and Greg kind of already said that. You can also, of course, also ask tell me about your greatest failure and how did that go? And what did you learn from it? We tend to learn most from the failures because we think about them a lot more than the successes. So, I mean, that's a hard question to answer, but it'll definitely get to that honesty and truthfulness that Eva was talking about, because you'll be able to tell and based on their answer. And the other thing I'd offer is reference checks. I found I learn more usually from the reference checks than I do from the person. I always ask for 3 people to talk to, and I know they're picking them, but it's amazing how much information I get from that. I phone them up myself. I don't farm that out to an HR firm or something, the HR department. I phone them up myself, and I usually start out by saying, thank you very much for taking this time. As you know, so-and-so gave you as a reference. Now, of course, everything that we discuss in this conversation is completely confidential, doesn't go anywhere. You say that unlocks a few things. And then you ask a bunch of questions. You have a list. And one of the questions is, so how do they deal with difficult situations? How do they get along with others? How do they deal with difficult people? Now, everybody can improve, Jane, even you and me. What do you think would be the thing that Tom could most improve on? Yes, those sorts of questions. And for me, that's usually been decisive. I would also say, if you've got people, don't give up on them. Try to grow them. take them off the team as the last resort. And that's why management can be difficult. One of the reasons, because you got to have very direct conversations. Things like, okay, so this wasn't up to the quality we need here. Here's what I'm going to need to do. I'd like you to work with John, who's got a lot more experience than this, for the next couple of weeks. Get as much as you can from them. We need to do this again. People can respond. You can, not everybody, but many people, if they're shown that kindness, along with the we got to get better, along with those two messages, you can grow them in many cases.
Awesome, very practical oriented. So thank you for all these thoughts, and I'd like to continue with Greg's thought about the second question. So in the beginning of the panel, all of you already shared your vision of what resourcefulness is, and now I'd like to ask you all the question, like, can you give us example how you became resourceful, or maybe you observed how someone became resourceful? So any interesting case or story which can show an example how the things works, if you'd like to build this competence. So Yeva, would you share something?
Yeah, I think one thing which we didn't mention, or at least I didn't mention, and it's important for me, it's exactly how to support the team, how to support people to speak. I went through a period of my life when I was teaching at university, when I did my PhD, and it was quite interesting to see students, and I think it's the same everywhere. You have students, you have your colleagues, now you have a team of the people who you are leading, how to support them to speak, and really to create the psychological safety. And what was my lesson learned, my own lesson learned, is that sometimes we are really under the pressure, and we are in the situation when we have to deliver and we have to solve the problem very quickly. And even if you try and you tell people like you really can share anything during brainstorming, no answer is wrong and everything is quite important, we are still coming to the point to judge and to provide an opinion. And what I learned is, even when I was leading the training and I had a group of different people, is that in a moment when you have introvert colleague and you will say something what will stop the person will not open the mouth anymore. And you just lost exactly this opinion. So how I learn, I always try to be very tolerant and open-minded, but I learned really to be careful about this and really to be always open-minded, even if I know, because sometimes people are sharing idea and from the beginning we can't do this, like it's no way, right? But you can't tell people we can't do this. So always try to find some positive thing and connect it. Maybe some advice is also to ask other people. So when you know that the opinion is not something what you expected, and it's possibly that you can't do it, is to ask for opinion of other people. So what do you think? What is your opinion on this solution? And then it's more spready, then people start to discuss. So it's not that you exactly said like no way. So be careful about this, because it's very very small line which you can cross, and once you lose this trust from people, it's very difficult to get it back. It's very long process to get it, and very short process to lose it. So be careful about this.
Thank you so much, Yeva, for sharing this. We'll keep an eye on this idea. Greg, will you continue?
I'll go next. I won't tell the whole long story and all the details in it, but basically I was coaching a group of executives of an organization that had some important strategic challenges ahead of them. And where the breakthrough came was when I started asking them, who in your organization asks the best questions? Is it the people in the room, or is it people outside of this room? And the answer to that question was, in some cases, a few people in the room, but a lot of the people that asked the best, most thought-provoking questions about resources and everything else weren't in the senior executive team. So we built up a different group of people, of these people that were really adept at asking questions, and got some really excellent results out of that. So the takeaway lesson here that I would offer to all of you is asking questions is a sign of resourcefulness. I think it's a necessary precursor for that. And that might be one of the things that you work on developing within yourself. If you want to be seen as resourceful, is ask more and better questions, but pay more attention as well to the people around you. Do they ask the questions that challenge the status quo, that imagine different kind of futures, that bring us away from our established conventions and orthodoxies? I'll just close by saying something I said earlier in the conversation. I believe that we're in a decade of jaw-dropping change. I think the kinds of changes we're going to see societally and within our organizations is going to be astounding. And I think it's going to put a real pressure on organizations to be quicker at sensing and sense-making out of things, at finding sources of resource and value so that they can quickly combine it. That's where I think this world is going.
Very interesting. Yep. Thank you for this input. Bill, would you add?
Sure. So I'd offer first to use your rational brain to come to your help when your emotional brain is not there, and that certainly helped me a lot. You kind of fake it till you make it. In other words, if you have problems and they look unsolvable, if you haven't had a lot of experience with solving unsolvable problems and that thrill of saying, my gosh, that looked hopeless and we found a solution. In fact, we're actually ahead of schedule now with that solution. If you haven't had that experience very often, you need to use your rational brain to tell yourself that that's absolutely possible. And then go try it and then experience it. And then the lower levels of the brain start to kick in and give you that motivation next time to go chase that solution. So a lot of things come from our emotional brain, and then our rational brain kicks in. You can steer the other way until the emotional brain gets experience and kicks in. I'd also offer put yourself in difficult situations. If you're ambitious, you want to grow your career, which not everybody has to. Not everybody needs to put themselves in difficult situations. We need everybody on the team. We need a pitcher, we need a shortstop, we need a catcher, an outfield, to use a baseball analogy. But if you really do want to develop yourself, you have that ambition, put yourself in difficult situations, put yourself on hard projects. Don't stretch yourself too much. Don't start with $1 billion project, but take on additional levels of responsibility and find yourself in difficult situations. Because there's a saying that you can put a lump of clay out in the hot desert sun for 100 years, and it just becomes a hard lump of clay. It needs the heat of a kiln to turn into china. And I found that for myself. I've been in some very, very difficult situations and made it through, and found that from that I had developed a lot of resourcefulness, resiliency, and ability to believe I could come up with solutions. I would offer, don't take on too many things at once. That's not the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I'm talking about a small number of challenging situations. You don't want to get overwhelmed by the quantity. I'd also suggest sometimes the boss needs to insist that you do the impossible. Sometimes that's the boss doing it for you. Sometimes it's you doing it for your team. I told the example the other day of how I love Captain Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek Next Generation. The team would keep coming to them and say, we can't maneuver through the asteroid belt. The maneuvering engines are all out. We can't do it. And he would say, well, we're going to have to find a way to get through the asteroid belt without the maneuvering engines. And I go, yeah, of course. That's what we need to do. And then they go off and find it out. And I've been in that situation. The example I gave the other day of my management said 3.5 years, it's got to be 3. They said, you got to go do what you guys might think is impossible. And sometimes you need the boss to say that, to say these other options are not on the table. You need to put 100% of your brain into finding this in order to sit down and concentrate and focus on it. So be responsive to your teams. Don't ask them to actually do the impossible, but sometimes we need that leadership to say, go and try to do the impossible for the team to find a way, develop that resourcefulness, and then next time around say, yeah, impossible, let's go see. So that would be my suggestions.
Very true. Thank you so much. I believe that all these stories and inferences out of it are very useful for all our audience. And to finish the session on the very practical note, I'd like to use the question that just came to the chat from Tina. So she asks, so how do young and newly graduated project manager who has no technical experience on the ground can brand himself as a resourceful? So I guess that's a very actual question for a big part of our audience today. So may I ask you to offer something, but in a way of like a short bullet point list, do 1 to 3, like 3 offers from each of you. So Eva, would you recommend something?
I would definitely recommend for if you are really graduate after university to find some mentor. So find someone who can really provide you feedback. You can learn from someone experience who you appreciate. It's like the whole methodology how to decide for right mentor. And I believe that there are a lot of people in your company or even on the market who will wish to do so. So if you really appreciate someone and you are sharing the same values, like find someone to learn from, find your role model who can be your source of inspiration. Another thing would be to think about yourself in this development mode, as Bill also mentioned. So just put yourself in this difficult situation if it's comfortable for you and learn from your experience. So do not be so so critic to yourself, because you're at the beginning of your career. You will do mistakes. Everyone is making mistakes, and it's fine. It should be like this. Just learn from mistakes and take it as an opportunity and use it like your source of information for yourself to boost your resourcefulness, to boost your resilience, and to work on this. And another thing is really have a good team of the people. And if you do not have good team of the people, I'm strong believer in looking into strength of people. So even if you are working with some team and it's normal, like I used to say to my students, like if you do not like me, it's completely fine. Like statistically, not everyone will like me. I'm also not liking everyone, and it's fine, but we need to respect each other. So once you are starting to work with other people, even if you do not like them or you do not appreciate everything what they are doing, try to look for strength in them, to learn even from them, and try to find the best way how to cooperate to better solution.
Thank you. Greg?
Okay. Thank you for that question, Tina. It's a really important one. So number one, recognize that reputation and personal brand are 2 different things. So reputation is assigned to you by others. personal brand is the way that you want others to perceive you. So if you want people to perceive you as a strategic thinker, to be perceived as resourceful, you need to think about what that kind of person would look like. So I would encourage you to be courageous and asking questions. So for example, what are the most important resources that are in your organization, whether they're employees or whether they're capital assets? Why were those resources hired or purchased, whatever the case may be? What's the future of those resources? So basically, what I'm saying is you need to be inquisitive and learn as much as you can about the resources that your organization has, the history, why they're there, and what their potential is for adding value. And in acquiring that knowledge, people will look to you, Tina, and they will say, she's resourceful. She has this kind of deep understanding of how value is created that other people do not have. So I'll stop there as that's my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill.
Sounds great. Makes a lot of sense to me. I would just add to that, ask if you can help. I think you need to have mentors, of course, and I used to be one of my favorite expressions. Is there some way I can help? Would you like me to take care of that? Oh my God, managers love to hear that. Would you like me to take care of that? Oh, please, yes. So then you'll get a reputation for being open to taking on and solving problems for other people. The one thing I'd add to that, though, is that doesn't mean you have to go do it all by yourself and never ask for help. In fact, the opposite. Go and do everything you can to solve it and get creative, and things might happen. But the moment you realize you need some help, you need some advice, you need some resources, that is not a sign of weakness. To not go ask for help or for resources would be a sign of weakness. So managers love to see people who will go and see if they can take care of it. And then when they realize they need help or resources, will come back and have that conversation right away. And over time, you'll get the reputation of being a problem solver. The one other thing I'd add quickly is try to get the position as a DPM, Deputy Project Manager. There's not a lot of responsibility, but there's a lot of work. And you get a lot of experience. You tell a PM, throw everything at me. I want to learn everything. I'd like to do everything for you. Take all the work off your desk. And then next time you're asked if you have any PM experience, say, yeah, I was a DPM. Yeah, I was a Deputy Project Manager. So there's a glide path to where you could be project coordinator first, then DPM, and then project manager. That might help.
What I would maybe add to this all is that take into consideration that you are at the beginning of your career and everything needs some time. So even creation of this personal brand in your company, or even when you are creating it on LinkedIn, it will take some time. So invest the energy, but do not have a high expectation that in 1 month everyone will recognize you as a resourcefulness person, because possibly it will take some period. And it really should be like this. It's the evolution in each company.
Awesome. Thank you so much, dear Yeva, Greg, William. Thank you so much for sharing your insights today with us. This hour passed almost like a minute, at least for me, because this was a very intense discussion and a lot of practical issues we managed to bring to the table. So I'm sure that many people from our audience will take a lot with them. Thank you for taking your Sunday for our event. We appreciate it a lot. That's really important for growing a new professional community and new professional generation. Thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Eva. Thanks, Greg.
All right.
Thank you.
Pleasure meeting everyone.
Yeah. Thank you once again, Bill, Greg, Yeva. So that was a fabulous panel discussion, and that's actually it. So we now moving to the end of our journey. So we closing the 4th edition of Global Project Management Days online conference. So it was 2 intense days with many insights and with many notes taking. I want to express appreciation one more time to our partners and sponsors who really helped to make this event possible again. So thank you, team of Kanban. Thank you, Balsamic. And once again, I'm glad that Evian platform became a home for this event. So it's a great pleasure for me as a head of Evian to host this event. I also want to give the big warm round of applause to Global Project Management Days team, who performed brilliant to arrange such extensive program. So we have a very multinational team prepared this event. We have Edita from Poland. We have Fereshta from Iran. We have Arash from Iran also. And we have Diana from Russia. Katya Sarachuk, who is the project manager of this event. So a big warm applause to you to make this happen. Personally, like to say a huge thank you to Tiago, who helped me to host this event during these days. And I'd like to say big thank you, guys. So that's really a pleasure. That's cool. Thank you, our guests. Thank you for your questions, for your being such involved and tuned in every our keynote. So it was a pleasure. We received a lot of warm feedback from speakers about your questions and your activities. So the last thing I have to announce is that next Global Project Management Days online conference will happen in November. So in the end of November, 27 and 28. We're gonna dive deeper in the topic of self-management and self-reflection. So it's gonna be interesting. Stay tuned. And also, I hope to see you this year in Russia, in St. Petersburg, for our annual Global Young Crew workshop, which will happen live in the end of September. So book the days. It's 18 and 20th of September. So current environment in Russia shows that we have all chances to conduct events without any serious limitations. So book the tickets, and we'll be glad to meet you there. We already prepared an intense 3 days program for you. And in general, encourage you to get more familiar with the whole range of Young Crew projects and activities. We have a vast set of competitions, conferences, and any chances to develop personal competences, capabilities in project management. So to know more, encourage you to visit the virtual stand of IPMA Young Crew at the exhibition at this platform. So again, thank you for these 2 amazing days. Thank you for participation, and Global Project Management Days 4th edition is officially closed. See you next time. Bye-bye.